Everybody to Platinum Travel's USA Week, the second of our inspirational travel weeks. And we are delighted that you've all joined us and decided to escape from the madness of the world at the moment into hopefully which would be a bit of an inspiring night and showcase some of the places in the USA that you may not have seen before. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick rundown on ourselves. A lot of you were here last week where we covered river cruising, escorted tours, rail tours and ocean cruising. But this week it's about all things USA, and Platinum Travel are well known for our USA holidays. Since we started in 2005, we've had a passion for the US, and it's something we've built on over the last 15 years. Everything we do is tailor-made to suit each client. So it's whether it's a fly drive, a tour, a twin center, a cruise and a rail holiday, whatever it is, everything is tailor-made to suit you, your family, our couple, or whoever it is that's traveling with you. And because we're so passionate about it, we've invested heavily in training, in attending conferences, and our team have extensive knowledge of the whole USA. And while we do sell, obviously, the cities like the New Yorks and the Chicagos, and then we go Floridas and Orlandos, we're everything outside that as well. So what you're going to see tonight and over the next 4 nights are some really stunning destinations that you just may not have thought of. And we'd love to show that to you and maybe put it on your radar for the next couple of years. So as always, we're licensed and bonded by the Commission for Aviation Regulation. So you're always protected when you book with Platinum Travel. And we'd like to think that we listen to our clients and we get what you need, and we listen to what you need, and we do everything we can to make sure you have a very, very unique experience. So moving on from that, why choose the USA? It's something that I wasn't going to put this slide in, and I decided at the last minute to pop it in because for us, when we're dealing in a normal year about the States, we know all the reasons, but a lot of the time it's not on people's radar and they may not have considered it as a holiday, and it can be stereotyped into theme parks, built up cities and rundown motels. People do tend to compartmentalize the US, but there's 50 states here, 50 amazing states, all very, very unique from each other. Such a huge choice of holidays available. So you could do a fly drive, you can do a tour, you could go on a train all over the US. You can decide to do a camper van. You could do a drive all around New England and finish with a camper van in Cape Cod. You could go across 5 states in Great America West. You could just do Colorado. It goes on and on and on. So there's every type of holiday you want. Mountains, beaches, cities, it's all there. And of course, theme parks if you want. It's great value for money. Even when the dollar is bad, the US is good value because their cost of living is a lot cheaper than here. Now, granted, if you're in the big cities, you are going to pay more money if you eat, in the top restaurant on the main street. But if you're going outside the cities and into these beautiful destinations we're going to show you tonight, there's phenomenal value. So even when the dollar is bad, the US is very good value for money. There's a huge number of direct services coming from Ireland in a usual year. Now, obviously they're minimalized at the moment, but those aircrafts that come from Dublin all have US pre-clearance. So if you're on a direct flight from Ireland to the USA, you will actually pre-clear customs and immigration in Dublin, which means when you arrive in the States, a little bit tired from a long flight, maybe you sail through and you're in your destination, and into a taxi and on your way to your hotel. Or if you're transferring, there's no passport control on arrival, there's no immigration on arrival or customs. You just literally hop to the next gate and you're on your next flight. So coming from Dublin or Shannon is a no-brainer coming from Ireland. And again, the States, it has everything for families, for couples, for singles. Like solo travel is huge, and they love us. So anywhere you go in the States, they're always extremely welcoming. And of course, they're all Irish too. They'll all tell you that no matter where you go. And on that as well, a lot of people don't realize we're in one of the top 20 countries regularly to visit to the USA. So we have huge numbers. I mean, in 2018 and 2019 alone, we'd over 500,000 people visit. So it is literally only across the water, and flights are going nonstop all day, every day in a usual year. So there's every reason to choose it. That's just a couple of tips. And any questions, by the way, that pop up tonight, even if they're not about the destinations we choose, if you've general USA questions or flight questions, travel questions, just pop them in. That's what we're here for tonight. So moving swiftly on, we are delighted tonight to be joined on our Mountains and Canyonlands, and we have got Utah, the Great America West, and Colorado. So we're very very big welcome to Lisa Cooper, who's going to be looking after Utah and Colorado. Give us a big wave, Lisa. She's dressed like a cowboy like me, except we forgot our hats. And Jim O'Dare, who's very kindly come and is going to look after Colorado and speak about all things Colorado this evening. I've put a map up there. Alaska and Hawaii are missing. I'm aware they're missing, but this is my graphics at its best. So I'll be kind of proud of the 7 states that I put up there this evening, but I know Alaska and Hawaii are missing off that map before it's said to me. So you can see where they are on the map. They're kind of middle and north as opposed to the east, west, and south. So it'll give you a good idea of how that part of the USA works and looks. And in themselves, those 7 states are quite different to each other. When we're going through these presentations this evening, I'd love you all to think about how you want to travel across the US. Do you want to do it by car, which is obviously these people in a convertible here, or an SUV? Do you want to do it by motorbike? Do you want to do it by train? Do it in a tent in some part, or do it on an escorted tour with this bus here? Or maybe you'd like to do it in an RV, which is a recreational vehicle, or a motorhome. Just those 2 slides, I'll flick between them there. It's no harm to have that in your mind before we start. Say, how do you want to see the USA? Maybe it's a combination of the few of them, because anything is possible. Literally anything is possible. So just keep that in your mind when you're popping through. And if you have any questions on these type of vehicles, especially the motorhomes, I know they've become popular in Ireland last year because we were at home. So it might be something you might want to try abroad. So without further ado, I'll stop my talking and I'll move you on to the wonderful Lisa Cooper. And Lisa, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll let you take over. Sorry, no, beg pardon. Lisa, I have yours here. Sorry, everybody. Lisa is live with us tonight, but just for a couple of technology reasons, we have pre-recorded hers, but she is here for all the questions. So we'll be able to have a chat with her afterwards. So if we're good to go, everybody can hear me okay? Grand, okay. And just make sure I have the video ticked. Sorry, lads, just check my boxes and get ready for Lisa. We're seeing double of you, Lisa, which is always a good thing.
Hello, thank you to Kieran Austin and Platinum Travel for inviting us today. My name is Lisa and I work for the Utah office of tourism based here in England. As you can see, Utah is located towards the west of the USA. You can either fly into the state capital of Salt Lake City or into Las Vegas, which is only a couple of hours from the southwest corner of Utah. It's the perfect state for the classic road trip, be that by car or by motorhome, and often combined with surrounding states of Nevada for Vegas, Arizona for Grand Canyon, Wyoming for Yellowstone, or Colorado. It's a year-round destination. Winter is good for combining ski in the southern national parks. Summer, it gets hot. So it's good to get up early to do a morning activity, travel to your next destination in the middle of the day, aircon advisable, and then take in a late afternoon or evening activity. And then spring and autumn, my favorite time of year, as it's slightly cooler and it's much, much quieter. You'll need about 10 days to explore the state. 2 weeks would be good, 3 weeks even better. So why go to Utah? It's all about the scenery. The main reason is our mighty 5 national parks in the south. They are Arches, Bryce Canyon, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef and Zion, but there is so much more. Many of the state parks and national forests would be national parks as well in any other destination. We're quite spoiled. There is a scenic byway or backway that connects you from most locations, so no boring straight American interstates. And there are 18 certified international dark sky parks. That's more than any other place in the world. And we like to say that we've got the greatest snow on earth. All of this combines to make a beautiful adventure. See what I did there? So let's start in Salt Lake City, our capital to the north of the state. They've just opened a brand new international airport in September last year, making it very accessible to the city. It's literally 10 minutes from the city. The city itself has a really great walkable downtown area with lots of award-winning restaurants. And it's home of the Church of the Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church. And you can have free guided tours around the temple and also Temple Square, where it's based on it. Salt Lake City is nestled very close to the Wasatch Front of the US Rockies Mountains, and the perfect access to the Great Salt Lake and Antelope Island. So let's start with Arches National Park, named because it has over 2,000 natural arches in it. The clue is in the title. Popular walking trails are Double Arch, the Windows, and Delicate Arch, pictured here. My top tip for that is get up early and hike to Delicate Arch to experience the sunrise. You won't be disappointed. It's quite steep to get up there, but it is well worth the effort. It's also a designated international sky park, good for stargazing. And it's very, very close to the gateway town of Moab. And Moab is known as the adventure capital of Utah. It's got a good choice of accommodation and restaurants. Really great tie there, actually. And there's a variety of activity operators that offer off-road adventures, whitewater rafting, mountain biking, and guiding walks. Moving on to Canyonlands National Park. Canyonlands is 45 minutes away from Moab and is often likened to the Grand Canyon. Created over millions of years ago by the Colorado and Green Rivers, it's made up of 3 districts: the Needles to the south, the Islands in the Sky, which is the most popular area with dramatic views down to the 2 rivers, and the Maze, which is quite remote and you do need a permit to access. Mesa Arch, pictured here, is in the Islands of the Sky district. So it's a great way to twin with Arches National Park, also Dead Horse Point State Park. This is where Thelma and Louise went over the edge in the film. And this gives you a good sort of like 2 or 3 nights to start your trip in Moab. Heading west, we come to Capitol Reef National Park. The lunar-like landscape here is truly mind-blowing. This dramatic scenery of huge cliffs and rock formations is all naturally formed. That's what makes it mind-blowing. Pictured here is a great scenic drive and gravel roads that take you into the real depths of the park to an area called Cathedral Valley, because they look like cathedrals. And I have to say, it was one of the highlights of my last trip. It was truly amazing. Little known though about Canyonlands is the park is home to some wonderful fruit orchards where you can taste some fruit from orchards planted by early pioneers. These orchards are still going strong, and it's a good excuse to try one of the local pies made by the local fruits after you've done a big hike. I mean, what's not to like? Bryce Canyon National Park, a truly huge natural amphitheatre. The rock spires you see here are called hoodoos, and some of them have been given very special names linked to their shape. So as you're going around and look closely, you might spot Queen Victoria or the 3 ugly naked guys, and not forgetting Thor's hammer. Sunrise and sunsets are particularly spectacular here, and I saw the Milky Way here, which was, and I don't use the word lightly, awesome. That is bucket list stuff. Finally, our last national park of the mighty 5 is Zion National Park. This is actually just 3 hours from Las Vegas. It's a huge canyon with towering cliffs. And what makes Zion different to the other national parks is that you're in the valley and you look up, whereas others you're either surrounded by it or you're looking down into the valley. You can go hiking, cycling, horse riding and canyoning. 2 of the very famous hike here are the Narrows, which is pictured there on the left, and Angel's Landing, which is not for the faint-hearted. That's very high, it's very narrow, and it's very steep. To help preserve the park, though, you can't drive in the park, but there is a free shuttle bus that you pick up from the gateway town of Springdale, and it takes you to the designated stops within the park. Oh, they're just going electric as well, though. So moving on to some of the other incredible sites across Utah, Monument Valley. This is, some of you will recognize this as the iconic filming locations, especially the Western films back in the day. Remember John Wayne sitting on his horse? Remember Forrest Gump running? This is Monument Valley. It's actually a Navajo tribal reservation sitting across the border between Utah and Arizona. And the tribespeople offer guided tours that can be done on horseback or 4x4. The monoliths here are spectacular, and probably the best one that the ones that you'll probably best know are the mittens, as pictured here. Lake Powell, what a beauty, and what a great spot to cool off during your road trip. If you just want a bit of downtime, a couple of days just chilling, you can go swimming, boating, you can take jet boats, you can do water sports, jet skis, kayaking, fishing, hiking, golfing, the list goes on. It's a really good kind of midway point on your, to kind of settle, have a breather before you head off on your road trip again. And look at it, it's fantastic. And some of the other locations I want to bring to your attention, the big picture there is Grand Staircase Escalante, huge off the beaten path, slot canyons, fabulous hikes and incredible scenery. Look at that sky. Goblin Valley State Park on the top right, lots of little hoodoos. Again, it's kind of off the beaten path again. Not very many people go there, but it's just so quirky. It's well worth a trip. Antelope Island, I mentioned before, again, completely spin, different look and feel. And then finally, the Coral Pink Sand Dunes and State Park. When you're there, you can have a go at sandboarding or just take a dune buggy tour and ride through this spectacular pink sand. But scenic driving, Utah really is the ultimate road trip destination, and it's the best way to experience it. Lots of people worry about driving overseas, being on the wrong side of the road, having to tackle multi-lane highways. In Utah, it's easy. Large, open roads, little traffic. Pictured here is Scenic Byway 12, and this is the route between Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Parks, and one of the best and most beautiful drives I've ever done. It's very rare that you drive along the road and you go, wow, and then 5 minutes later, wow. And, oh my God, I mean, and you literally do this down Highway 12, Scenic Highway 12, it's fantastic. And as I mentioned before, Utah is home to the highest concentration of accredited international dark sky places in the world. This is where there's very little light pollution and fantastic stargazing opportunities. Many of the locations have ranger-led dark sky programs, often free, and they use high-powered telescopes for you to look at, and they can point out the sky and the star constellations. You also have, on a bright night, a good chance of seeing the Milky Way. As I said, bucket list stuff. And down to activities, you can activities and adventure galore are run throughout Utah, but you can be as hardcore or as softcore as you want. For some, the adventure may be just hitting the open road and exploring the national parks, getting out, having a mooch around and a wander, and that's brilliant, and you can absolutely do that in Utah. For others, they may want to test themselves, they might want to go mountain biking, canyoneering, they want to do some whitewater rafting, they want to do horseback riding, climbing. You have options. You don't have to feel forced to be super active. You can just take Utah at your own pace. And as I mentioned before, the greatest snow, we think we've got the greatest snow on earth. The snow in Utah is light, fluffy and powdery, and for skiers that's super important. There are 10 ski and snowboard resorts within 1 hour of Salt Lake City. It's not like skiing in the European resorts. The slopes are wide open. It's like skiing down a motorway. There are very few other skiers around as well, so it's perfect, freedom. Park City is probably the best known resort. It's a lovely mountain town, and it hosted the Winter Olympics in 2002. But winter is more than just skiing in Utah. You've got options to go snowmobiling, tubing, which is great fun, tobogganing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and you can even have a go at the bobsleigh on the track at the Olympic Park if you're brave enough. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope I've managed to tease you a little bit into coming over and visiting Utah. I'm Lisa. I work very closely with Platinum Travel, and together we can create your perfect Utah adventure. Thank you.
Now, Lisa, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there at the end. Apologies. Stop sharing. Here we go. Then we want to unmute yourselves there, and I just unmuted. Perfect. Sorry, Lisa, I cut you off saying goodbye just at the end of that presentation.
Okay.
Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. I'm going to remove one of these Paulas here, and I'm not sure which one. Paula, you put on your camera there, and I'll know which Paula you are, and I'll take you off the screen then. Okay, and we'll just remove it there. There you go. Perfect. Grand. Okay. Oh, Lisa, that was fab. Absolutely fab. And just starting at the end bit, I think we forget to think of Utah as a ski resort. I mean, in Colorado, I know, Jim, you probably say it's probably more on people's radar, but Utah for this side of the world probably isn't. Have you seen any increase before this year in people going to Utah for skiing from Europe or the UK and Ireland?
Yeah, we have actually. We were just beginning to sort of like go up and up and up. I mean, people do tend to think of Colorado when they think of the USA, but for the people that are really keen on skiing, and the one thing that COVID has taught everybody is that a skier's got to ski. So we're anticipating sort of when travel comes back again, that North America will be on in the line of sight for people that want to go there. The beauty about skiing in North America is it's very, very different to Europe, and it's just a wholly different experience. And like I said, it's like skiing down a motorway. But yeah, Salt Lake City's definitely got a lot to offer.
And that's the thing. I think sometimes, I know it's quite people say it's so far away, but if you were going skiing in Europe from Ireland, you could have a 4 or 5 hour transfer when you arrive into France or Austria or Germany. And you go off. So why not just take 2 flights and get over Salt Lake City if you have 7 or 8 nights? And as you said earlier, sometimes the value for skiing in the US is better value than Europe. Yeah. Europe can be very, very expensive. Absolutely. So it's definitely one on the radar. And of course, everything else goes without saying. There's amazing, amazing stuff for the rest of the year. Before, Paulie, I'll let you start with the questions that have come in so far, because I've a few of the notes here, but I'll let you go ahead first. I'm sure you have questions so far there. Paula? Maybe she can't hear us. Okay, I'll go with my question. So how, I know I don't like mentioning the C word, but I had a chat with one of your colleagues when I was at a conference. The C word is in the COVID word. I had a chat with one of your colleagues when I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. And it was a 4-day conference. And I think I chatted to about 25 states, including Jim, I was talking to you and on a call as well. And I came out of that conference so positive because of the news coming out of the USA. I didn't expect to get as much good news about the individual states and how they're rolling out the vaccinations, how the national parks are opening, how the restaurants are, some of them are at 100% capacity. It gave me massive hope. Would you agree Utah is moving in the right direction as well?
Absolutely. Do you know what? Utah, of all the people that we represent, Utah have been really on their game when it's come to sort of managing the whole COVID and the vaccinations. I mean, they've gone up and down, they spiked like everywhere in the world, but they're really on it. I mean, they were the first to start wearing, masks. They were the first to sort of like, look at, get the restaurants and manage the restaurants and have the social distancing, etc. I mean, it's very much in the USA down to personal choice at the moment. With the vaccinations, but when it comes to the towns and the cities, they are definitely very pro getting people back in. They absolutely believe in international tourism. They love having people from Ireland and the UK, and they're willing to open arms, because one of the things that I was going to say and kind of mention is people traditionally tend to want to go on holiday during the summer, but it does get very hot.
Yeah.
I mean, in the national parks down in the south, you're in the desert, and you can be literally 40 degrees. So we always kind of recommend that people travel in the spring or the autumn, because it's just that bit cooler, and the Americans aren't traveling then as well. So it's a good time to go, because it's just you've got a lot more breathing space in terms of like capacity, etc.
Yeah.
They are on it.
Yeah, they seem to be. I think they just want it back. It seems to be the word. And what about you, Jim? May as well ask that question to you then very quickly about Colorado. I know you haven't presented yet, but would you say Colorado is doing well? From speaking to your counterparts, they seem to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very lucky in Colorado, much the same as Utah. We've got a very dispersed population, which does help. I think it's going to be one of the sort of big things going forward is going to be educating people that the Colorados and Utahs of this world aren't like the Californias and the Floridas of this world, where they've actually had, pretty bad infection rates, and they seem to grab most of the headlines. But thankfully, most of the West, the big wide open spaces, we haven't really been that affected at all.
Absolutely. And I know the bookings as well for this summer domestically they were brilliant last year. They're going to be brilliant this year. Some states aren't even down that much because domestic tourism just rocketed. So which is good because jobs were kept. And I'm sure that the Great America West states were the same, Lisa, as well. They're all doing very well from what they're saying. So
yeah, absolutely. And there's a benefit to having all the wide open spaces and being in the mountains. Again, you kind of it's deemed as safer. But they do also, they acknowledge that people want to go. But to your point about the fact that they were busy last year, and things are looking busy this year. That's a good thing. It means that there's going to be attractions open and places to stay open when we get back, and borders open and we can start traveling. So that's a positive in my mind.
Absolutely, and jobs are being kept, and as you know, if jobs are being kept in tourism, it's always good, and hotels aren't closing. Right, Paula, how are we getting on with questions?
A couple of questions there. Two of them on wildlife. Anne has asked, what about wild animals? And Aideen was wondering, are there many snakes and scorpions?
That's a great question.
Really good question.
Do you know what? In Utah itself, there aren't that many kind of wild animals. A few coyotes. There's going to be deer and elk everywhere, but you're not going to find any bears really. In terms of snakes, there are snakes if you go out into the desert. I wouldn't be able to name them. And scorpions, I've never heard of any scorpions, but I can definitely look into it.
Good to be asked something new, Lisa, every now.
Yeah, totally. I love it.
That's a great question for the next presentations too.
Neil has said there are reports that the USA may reopen for Irish residents in May. Is there any inside track or even a direct line into the White House?
Which one of us can answer that?
I wish we had an answer for that. I think there's a lot of chatter going on. If we very seriously, Biden's come in and he's made it part of his 100 days was to get as many vaccines as possible. And the idea behind that is they want to open the borders. I personally think that there's with us and how well we're doing in the UK, and then Ireland will follow on behind that. It could be that it might be open to both of us, for along with it. I can't speak. Sorry, with a vaccination passport. I think nobody's going anywhere really unless they're vaccinated at the moment. But there is a value, and like Kira said right at the beginning, there's a connection between the USA and Ireland, a big and a very strong connection. So I would imagine that the president's definitely got hit that on his radar, or Ireland on his radar.
And Aideen has asked, what kind of temperatures are we talking about in the national parks and canyons?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, in the summer it's hot, really, really, really hot, and then usually kind of about Utah, and then when I talk about the Great America West, they're both destinations that you're advised to take layers, because it could be that you get up in the morning and you feel a bit of a chill, and then as you're sort of going out and doing your activity by kind of midday, it's like 25-30 degrees and you're in a t-shirt. You're always going to need sunblock everywhere you go, even in spring and autumn. But it can be anything from, depending on the time of year, usually in spring and autumn, you're going to be anything from about 20 to 30 degrees on average.
And if you travel there in the winter then, Lisa, if you're not skiing on the flatter lower parts, I mean, are most of the parks open? Are they closing in the winter? Like, are there certain parks that are year round? Like, say, for instance, Yellowstone is open when we talk about the Great America West, is open year round, but only certain roads are a certain way in and out. Is Utah similar? Is it?
Zion and Bryce are definitely open to all year. As you go into Canyonlands and Arches, it very much depends, but they tend to be as open as they can be. But the two further south, and that's purely down to weather. If they have a big dump of snow and they can't open the roads, then they've got to close. But with all the best will in the world, they'll be open all year.
It's a good destination because winter flights out of Ireland can be brilliant value. So you could get a very, very good holiday to the likes of Utah, Colorado, and Great America West that time of year, So, sorry, Paul, I'll let you keep going.
No, Donal has asked, what's a dark sky place?
So an accredited dark sky park is where you can actually go. There's very, very minimal light pollution, so that when you're out there, you literally can only see through a torch. So when you look up and you've got a clear sky, that's when you get to see as many different stars and constellations as possible. And to have so many in Utah just shows how much wide open space there is. And this ability, I mean, there's not very many places in the world that you can actually go up and you can see the Milky Way. And as I said on my little video, it was truly an awesome moment. And my husband had to drag me out of Bryce. I'm like, oh no, there's more stars, there's more stars. They just kept coming. And he's like, we've been here for 2 hours, I'm cold and I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh no. But it's minimal light pollution and gives you the ability to look up and see the galaxy.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Absolutely.
It is amazing.
Paula?
Last one at the moment from Neil. What are ballpark figures for 1 week rental in Utah and Colorado for a car and a camper? Now, I know that we have some offers up towards the end of the presentations as well, so we can send them on as well.
So I'll talk about the pricing a little while, Neil, because it's so bespoke and no two trips are the same that it's kind of tricky, especially when you're doing RVs on one-way basis, and there's RVs to suit 2 people, right up to suit 7 or 8 people, so we have sample ideas at the end, and we'll definitely give you a few ideas for those, and then we've done a couple for each of them. But I'd love to know in the chat box, actually, as we're going along and when Jim is presenting as well, and when we come back to Lisa for the Great America West, how people could see themselves doing these dates. Do you want to do it by car? Would you do it by RV? Or what's appealing to you? Or is your mind changing as we go? So it'll be good to see how people who haven't seen these itineraries before, these destinations, what they're like. Perfect. So we'll give you a little break.
Actually, just one more. It's just popped in before you finished. Marion's just asked, are there plenty of services for RV users in Utah?
Absolutely. There are plenty of different campgrounds, and they are probably one of the best states perfectly set up to look after people with RVs, because it's so popular in that part of the world. And again, the same for the Great America West. They just nail it. And I would imagine it's the same, Jim, in Colorado. You have to book a spot, most of the time, because especially if you're going through the national parks and you want to stay in one of the campgrounds there, you do have to book ahead. But yes, absolutely brilliant services.
That's a really good point as well, because I think sometimes when we take an RV, we presume it won't be a bother and you'll just pop out anywhere. But or like campgrounds, you could pay $10 a night up to $100 a night, depending on the service. So if you're staying in a campground in a national park that has really good facilities, that's going to be heavily booked out. So you need to kind of get those done in advance, or else you're staying in a Walmart car park, which isn't the most scenic place to stay. So I wonder, can Colorado top Utah, Jim? You want to give it a go?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite as well organised as Lisa, so rather than having a all singing, all dancing video, you're just going to get me voicing over a few slides in person.
Brilliant, but that's what we want. We want to know from the expert, so that's perfect. So we'll mute now and stop video and let you go ahead and share your screen and tick your boxes. You know me and my obsession with the boxes.
Okay, well, I hope that everyone can see that. My name's Jim. I'm from the Colorado Tourism Office. And I thought, what better way to introduce Colorado than to show you a quick video. And then after that, I'll go on and talk about Colorado using a couple of slides. So here we go with the video.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. Nothing's gonna stop us, nothing's gonna top this, nothing like we've ever seen. And I raise my hands to the sky, what a feeling. 'Cause I feel like dancing high, got a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins. A moment to feel
So I hope that gave you just a very brief flavour for the state of Colorado that you can see here on the map with the flag, much like my t-shirt. We are known as the gateway to the Rocky Mountains and the West. Why the gateway to the Rocky Mountains? Well, that's because more of the Rocky Mountains are in the state of Colorado than all of the others combined. We've got more big mountains in Colorado than every other state in the contiguous states of the United States combined. It's about a 9.5-hour flight from London to Denver. It's 7 hours behind, and you can fly there daily with British Airways or with United Airways, or alternatively, many other airlines you can hop with Iceland Air or any of the other American carriers via a number of different airports in the States. So why would you go to Colorado? Well, we have 300 days of sunshine every year. I'd imagine that's much the same as Utah, but it's a lovely dry atmosphere because we're so high up. It's fantastically dry. It means that ladies, if you go out at night, your hair's not going to get frizzy. Apparently that's a very important thing. My wife told me, but it really is, you're most likely not to get wet. The rain, when it does fall, usually falls in the winter as snow. So for most of the summer, spring and fall, the weather is absolutely fantastically dry and sunny. As I said, we've got an awful lot of mountains, and this is really the reason why people come to Colorado. It is the scenery. We've got 4 national parks. I'll come on to them in a little while, but to be honest, when you leave Denver and drive up into the Rocky Mountains, the whole of that side of the state, the whole of the western half of the state is like one big national park. We've got more scenic byways than any other state. It means that pretty much wherever you go in the western half of the state, every single corner that you drive around is going to be another stop the car, get out, beautiful photo opportunity, like this one here, which is the Maroon Bells near the town of Aspen. Colorado is a hugely outdoorsy state. It's why most people move to Colorado. In fact, I think Colorado is currently the #1 moved to states in the United States. People go there for the outdoor lifestyle. But again, like in Utah, you don't have to be some extreme sports enthusiast. Most people move there just because they want to get out into the great outdoors. They want to go walking in the wildflowers in the spring. They want to see the fall colors in the autumn. And of course, they've got all of the sunshine year round as well. I mentioned we've got 4 national parks. Our national parks are all incredibly difficult. No, they're very easy to get to, but they are very different. The one on the top right here is called the Rocky Mountain National Park, and that does exactly what it says on the tin. It's got one of the most incredible drives in it. From east to west, you can go over the Trail Ridge Road, which goes up to nearly 4,000 meters, which is about 1,000 meters higher than the highest road in the Alps, just to put it into context. And you really do feel like you're up on top of the world. Then to the left of that, we've got the Mesa Verde National Park. It's all the way down in the bottom southwest corner. And again, it works very well. It's close to that Utah border. So it's great if you want to pop across the border and go over and see Monument Valley and then on to the Grand Canyon as well. And that's a very popular itinerary or part of an itinerary. On the far left, we've got the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. This used to be called the Grand Canyon before they found the Grand Canyon. And it's the Colorado River that winds through this and then on and off to the Grand Canyon. And at the bottom here, we've got the Great Sand Dunes National Park. These are the highest sand dunes in North America. It's an ancient seabed that when it dried out, it's been washed up against the side of the Christabel Mountains, which are 14,000 feet mountains that you can see in the background there. Most people will fly into Denver. It's called the Mile High City. It's very definitely worth spending at least a day or so there to acclimatize. 10 years ago, I would have probably told you not to bother stopping in the town. Now, the whole of the center of the town has undergone a huge refurb, if you like, and refresh. It's now very clean, it's very safe, it's entirely walkable. You can get a train from Denver Airport right into Union Station, which is that photo in the bottom left-hand corner. And then nearly all of the hotels are within a short walking distance or a free shuttle from Union Station. It's definitely worth going in for, like I said, 24, 48 hours. You can even save perhaps a couple of days worth of car hire because you really don't need a car when you're in the city itself. Most people will then grab a car and head off around the state. As I said, some incredible driving routes all the way around the state, up into the Rocky Mountains, heading west, which is what most people will do, popping over into Utah to the west or up into Wyoming north of us. Something that's very nice to do as you're traveling around the state after a long day in the car, perhaps. You're weary, you get to your destination, you stop at one of these hot springs, which are dotted throughout the states. Again, we've got more hot springs in the States than I think any other state in the United States. Some of them are very developed. There's a couple of these ones that you can see in the photos here. Others really are just pools out in the middle of nowhere in the forests and up in the mountains. You probably need to know where you're going to find them, but it really is a very nice thing to do as you're driving around the state, is to experience one of these hot springs. Although do be a little bit careful because some of them are clothing optional after dark. Another thing about Colorado is we have a large number of dude and guest ranches, and they do differ a little from some of the ones in our neighboring states because many of them you don't need to stay for 7 nights. You can stay for just 1 or 2 nights, which is great if you don't want to invest a whole week of your time or you don't know whether you're going to like it. Particularly for first timers, it's an incredibly popular thing to do on an itinerary. It's just to drop into one of our 30 or so dude and guest ranches that offer this short stay. And as you can see, they are all over the whole of the state and usually in the most incredible mountain locations. Colorado was built on mining. We've got something like 1,500 ghost towns dotted through the states as well, which is a very popular thing to go and do while you're in Colorado. And 8 of the historic trains, these old mining trains, have been renovated and now ply their trade. They're usually only 1 hour to 3 hours long, the trips. The most famous being the Durango to Silverton in the southwest of the state. But it is something that a lot of Brits find incredibly popular because they are throughout the state and they're a lovely thing to do, to go and see some of the scenery that you wouldn't necessarily see if you're in a car. I know that someone was asking about wildlife. Well, we've got an awful lot of it in Colorado. We don't have any grizzly bears, you'll be happy to hear, plenty of black bears, and then of course elk and moose and all sorts of other sort of marmots and mountain dwelling creatures. But in most of the national parks you go in and you'll see these as a matter of course. It's not like you have to particularly go looking for them. They'll just be there crossing the roads. They won't be interested in you. You'll be a lot more interested in them, I can assure you. One bit of good news that we've got in Colorado is, well, in fact, and Utah as well, because that's where it ends up, is the Rocky Mountaineer, which starts this summer, starts in Denver and heads west through Glenwood Springs and then ends up in Moab next to the Arches National Park. Something that unfortunately we may not get a chance to experience this year, depending on how the whole sort of vaccine thing rolls out. But definitely for next year, it's going to be incredibly popular. They've already extended the season this year because so many Americans want to go. So if you are a fan of train travel, perhaps you've done the Rocky Mountaineer up in Canada and you fancy going and doing it in Colorado and Utah, we would recommend booking early because it's going to get very, very busy. And then on the right-hand side here, up at the top, this is the Pikes Peak Cog Railway. So this goes all the way up to the top of a 14,000-foot peak. They've got a brand new restaurant and visitor center up at the top, and it's located just outside the town of Colorado Springs. And I can't really finish without just having a quick mention about the skiing. I guess, you know, if you think about skiing in North America, there are many places that are fantastic to go to, not least Utah and obviously Jackson up in Wyoming. But most people will think of Colorado when you think of skiing. A lot of our towns were towns first before the skiing came along. So they're wonderful places to stay in the summer, places like Aspen and Vail and Breckenridge, Telluride, Crested Butte. But of course, winter is what they're known for, and the skiing there really is world class, and a huge amount of choice as well. So if any of you are skiers, then definitely nice and easy into Denver, and then you can get up to the resorts very, very simply from Denver. I think that's about it. I've probably forgotten to say a lot of things, but if you've got any questions, please do feel free to ask. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks, Jim. That was really good. And every time I look at Colorado, I want to go, because it's supposed to go last year and it never happened. And I'd say I've told Jim that probably every time I've seen him, I remind him about how I was supposed to go to Colorado and I didn't get to go. One day, Jim, one day. God, there's so much there, and I'm sure Paula has questions already, but just three things that popped to mind for me straight away was one, and this probably seems a bit silly, but for people who don't know the difference between a dude and a guest ranch and what a ranch experience is, would you give a quick brief overview? Because I know Lisa's probably going to touch on it as well, but it's such a big part of holidays, and you hear people say, I want to go to a ranch, but they don't actually know what's involved in it and how there are different types.
Well, there are actually lots and lots of different types. Some are actual working ranches where you pay to go and work on the ranch. So you pretty much muck in with whatever they're going to be doing during the day. And then there are others that are more set up for a kind of guest experience. So they'll give you the opportunity to go and out with the ranchers if you want to, but they'll also have plenty of fly fishing and zip lining and jeep tours. And perhaps those ranches may be a little bit more luxurious. They may have kids clubs in some of them as well. And I'm sure that Lisa will tell you there's a huge variety of these ranches. There really is something for everyone, from ones that are kind of quite, you know, low down and dirty, all the way up to 5-star ranching. It's more like 5-star hotels with on ranches.
So it's worth, and you can do that thing of, there's so many different price points. So as you say, it's a great experience for kids. It's great that you don't have to stay a certain length of time in some of them. So don't rule it out. If you want it as part of your experience in the middle of your fly drive, it's a great thing to do and something different for the kids. The other thing I was thinking, I was looking at Denver and the is it the Crawford Hotel that's in Union Station? Is that the name of the hotel?
Right.
I do feel, and something we try and encourage people to do, is to stay in Denver a couple of nights, because a lot of the time people use Denver as a gateway and they're gone, and they don't actually experience Denver as a city itself. I mean, what would you say the best things about Denver are? Would you definitely encourage a few nights there before hitting the road?
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice and easy to get to. As I said, from the airport, you can just jump on a $10 train that gets you right into Union Station. The Crawford Hotel, the one that you were talking about, is actually in the refurbished Union Station. It's a beautiful 5-star hotel. But everything is within a very short walk of Union Station. I mean, Denver is a huge city. I think the greater metropolitan area is about 3 million people. So make no mistakes, it is a vast, vast city. But the bit that you'll see as a tourist is called Lower Downtown, Lodo, and it's all clustered around Union Station. If you're a fan of any of the sports, the Broncos Stadium is right there. If you want to go to Coors Field, you can go and see the baseball. Again, that's a 5-minute walk from Union Station. Most of the hotels are also a very short walk, a free shuttle, or a very affordable cab ride from Union Station as well. And when you're in Denver, we've got some incredible art galleries. I mean, you'd expect for a city of that size, you know, the types of things that we have, but we do have some amazing galleries, and of course all of the restaurants and the Western gear shops and things that you would want as well.
Yeah, there's everything you possibly need. And in saying that as well, by spending a few days there, the other thing that we find we need to let people know about is there's lots of resorts that you can stay. Sometimes a fly drive, people, it's one night, one night, one night. But if somebody was finishing Denver, I mean, I have a soft spot for the Broadmoor because I know it's an amazing resort, but that's a real resort. If somebody has done a drive or they've just come off the Rocky Mountaineer for, say they've come from Salt Lake City or Moab, they can just go down the road. Is it about 45 minutes or an hour down the road down to the Broadmoor? And that's an amazing resort, isn't it? I know you love all the hotels the same, and I know you can't pick a favorite, but I'm putting the words in your mouth. So, but the Broadmoor is well worth it because there's so many different types of accommodation there.
Outside of the mountain towns, so outside of the ski resorts, if you like, where there are plenty of 5-star hotels, if that's what you're looking for, the Broadmoor is just in the town of Colorado Springs. So like you said, about an hour south of Denver. It's where Pikes Peak is, which is where that cog railway that takes you all the way up to the top. And the Garden of the Gods Park is there as well. And yes, it's the hotel that's had the 5-star rating in the States longer than any other hotel in the States.
Wow.
Continuously. So it's a fabulous place. It's a huge place. It's 3,000 acres. It's got golf courses. It's got its own zoo. It has its own ranch. It really is a fabulous place.
Yeah, so it's worth putting on a bucket list, definitely. Now, sorry, Paul, I went on with my own queries there. Thank you.
No, you're grand. Yeah, there's a few questions coming in here now. Neil has just asked, how significant do you think the new Rocky Mountaineer Denver to Moab route will be for overseas visitors?
For both, actually. I spoke to both Lisa and Jim. I said,
Yes, well, it goes both ways. It's not just Denver, Moab. Obviously, the train then comes back again. We think it's going to be hugely significant. There's 65,000 seats on it this year, and they've already extended it once, as I said. Hopefully, they'll extend it next year. Now, that's nowhere near the number of Brits that come into Colorado every year. And of course, not everyone on the train is going to be British, but because so many Brits have done the one up in Canada, I think that this will be very exciting, and we'll see lots of people coming down, first timers to Colorado and possibly Utah as well, coming and going on the train.
It's another bucket list item. Having people who want to do done it in Canada. It's such a special experience, and people tend to use it for anniversaries or big birthdays. And it's good. It's a good way to sort of really put the icing on the cake of a holiday. And going in between the two states as well, you're going to get the mountains and the glorious fresh air of Colorado, and then you go into a completely different feel in Utah. Just looking at the colors behind me, you're going to have such a special experience by doing both, and then linked by this train. And the other advantage as well, as much as it is quite a high ticket priced item, but it is very special and it's worth it. But it saves you having drop-off fees with your RV or your car hire, because when you go into different states, it's always important to be reminded of that when you do pick up a car in one state and drop it off in the other, you're going to get charged quite a high price. But there is an argument that it's worth paying that because you get to explore more. But
absolutely, yeah. And we have a couple of prices coming up at the end, actually, just to give an example. But like that, we had Rocky Mountaineer as one of our guests last week, and Sarah went into it in detail, and it's an amazing experience. So it's definitely one to consider. And when you put it all together and you look what you'd spend on everything else, so we can put a couple of prices up. Sorry, Paula, go on ahead.
Jim, Tommy has asked, which would be the best area for novice skiers?
Well, I mean, all of the mountains have got everything from green runs all the way up to double black diamonds, which in the States is about as sort of high as it gets. I would suggest probably go to Keystone. Keystone is part of the Vail Resort setup. So you buy a pass, you get access to a lot of the ski resorts in Colorado and actually in Utah as well. And I love Keystone because it's a village feel, and they also have floodlit skiing, which means that if you really, really fall in love with it, like I did, you don't need to stop when the sun goes down. You can keep going until about 9 o'clock at night. So you get extra value on your lift ticket.
Excellent. Carmel has asked, how big are the RVs?
as big as you want them.
America.
Denver is one of the more popular RV pickup places from the main brands that I'm sure you work with, Kira. Yes, you probably know better than I, actually. I would imagine there's a certain length beyond which that becomes impossible to kind of drive them around. But yeah, I know that I've seen some absolutely vast ones out there, like sort of towns on wheels.
They're huge. They're phenomenal. They're absolutely phenomenal. And yet you can get the tiniest little, cute little ones if you want, or go big. And normally if we had 2 or 3 people, we would give one that sleeps 5. We'll always go a little bit bigger because there isn't that much in the difference in price. So that's what we would normally do, because you want a bit of extra space, especially with kids and stuff as well.
The other thing as well, important thing to know, there's a couple of routes in Utah that if you go for the big boy, like the Whopper, you can't actually travel down, because where you do the hairpin turns, shifting a big RV can be slightly tricky. So yeah, you kind of encouraged to go for slightly smaller. But it's just one of those sort of hints. Yeah, I've seen an RV stuck. It's like
Suez Canal.
Again?
Bit like the Suez Canal.
Yes, absolutely. It's exactly like the Suez Canal.
They're stopping all the traffic for days. How are we getting on, Paula?
Neil has asked, is there a John Denver experience in Denver or Aspen?
I'm very glad you asked that, Neil. There's a couple of things that I would highly recommend. First of all, just outside of Denver is the Red Rocks Amphitheater, which you may have seen in the presentation there. It's a huge 3,000 seat outdoor venue with 2 vast red rock monoliths either side of it. It's supposed to be perfect acoustically, and you sit there looking at the stage and you have the lights of Denver in the background, and they have a hall of fame, and John Denver played there many times. So if you're a big John Denver fan, you should get up there and go and see some of the memorabilia there. I think it's now no longer able to enter America's best concert venues competitions because it just always keeps winning. So if you are a music fan and you're in Denver, then it's you can actually get a very short 20-minute bus ride from the center of town out there and go and see a gig, definitely. And then up in Aspen, there is actually a shrine to John Denver up on the mountain, buried in some trees. But if you know where to go, you can get a map and you can go and ski and pay a pilgrimage to the John Denver shrine.
You can see he said there he's a huge John Denver fan. We'll get you there, Neil. Don't worry, we'll get you up there.
I have 2 more at the moment. Marion has asked if she wanted to take a break from sightseeing, are there some good golf courses available?
Marion, I'm very glad you asked that. I'm a very big golfer, not very good golfer.
Jim, your whole face just changed as you said that.
Well, I know, yes. Yes, there's some absolutely fabulous golf in Colorado. Obviously, people only get to play it for about half of the year. So there aren't a vast number of courses out there, but I would say there's got to be about 60 or 70 dotted through the states. And you feel like the $6 million man or $6 million woman when you're playing, because of course at that altitude, you hit the ball about 10 to 20% further. So you've got to be a little bit careful because it really does catch you out. But yes, there's some absolutely beautiful mountain courses. And in fact, well, they've played the US Open there. There are some wonderful courses down in Denver, but I like the ones up in the mountains. And yes, they're dotted around. Most of the resorts, most of the ski resorts in the summer have some beautiful golf courses.
Gorgeous.
And last question at the moment is from Steve. How far ahead should you book for a stay in the national parks of Colorado and Utah, particularly the most popular ones?
Well, I can answer for Colorado. There aren't a huge number of places to stay in the national parks in Colorado. It's not like going to a Yosemite and wanting to stay in the Ahwahnee or somewhere like that. So actually, you probably don't have to go to as far in advance, although in the area, they are always the first bits of accommodation that tend to book up. So it's certainly worth thinking about it. I don't know, 3 to 6 months in advance, I would say. But also, apart from the Rocky Mountain National Park, which is only an hour and a half from Denver, so that's obviously incredibly popular to go to, the other 3 are really quite remote. and you've got to make a point of going there. So they have less footfall. There are no queues getting in. You don't have to reserve to go in there, but there really are very few bits of accommodation.
Fantastic. And Lisa, you're probably the same answer then, because you mentioned Utah for booking in advance. Similar.
For Utah, I'm going to repeat myself on my my Great America West video as well, because I covered ranching and I also covered national parks, but there's not as many places to stay in Utah in the parks, but it's surrounding. But as you go into the Great America West and you start talking about Glacier and Yellowstone, you're looking at probably over a year. But also, as we mentioned earlier, booking RV spots and the campgrounds in there as well, book them over a year in advance, because they do get booked up. So as much as the open road and you kind of want to freewheel it, you do have to have a few points that you have to book along the way. Even if you can use them as target points, right? We've got to be there by Tuesday. Let's do it. But the national parks they're very, very popular. The other thing as well to say about the accommodations, and I'll be very, very honest with you here, you're talking 5-star prices for 3-star accommodation, and you're paying for being in the park. But I think it's important that people know this straight up. Because you think, oh, I've paid all this money, and you're in a little cabin. And they're fair, they're nice. So they're clean, tidy, but they're not luxurious.
Yeah. So and it's all about location.
Totally.
Completely.
Absolutely. Being able to open your door and then be in the middle of an amazing national park, you get what you pay for, really.
I know, absolutely, and the views are this beautiful. They really are. The ones that we're looking at behind all of us. I mean, I've Idaho behind me. So you've Colorado, you Utah. Is this stunning? These aren't made up pictures. It is this stunning. So
this is a picture I took. This is the Mitten Shadow Festival, which happens twice a year, where the shadow one mitten goes onto the other. You can see it behind me, and it only happens in March and September. And I happen to be there on the day. I can't tell you, I nearly peed my pants with excitement.
Really like the sky with the stars.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It was a very exciting holiday.
Your poor husband, he's probably still there waiting for you. So.
I know. It's like, oh my God, he went grey.
Oh, they're stunning pictures though, absolutely stunning. How are we getting on, Paul? Are we done with questions?
That's it for the moment, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll put on the other Lisa, the recording Lisa, and we'll have the last presentation, which is the Great America West, which has 5 states, but I'll let Lisa tell you more. Now, let's say this, and we move on from this.
Hello.
Don't worry. To Jim.
Thank you to Kira, Austin and the team for having us this evening. I'm Lisa and welcome to the Great American West states of Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota and Wyoming. This is a very diverse and authentic region of the USA, far from the bright lights of New York and Las Vegas or the beaches and theme parks of Florida. It covers a very big area, so it can feel quite daunting. So today I want to help you understand a bit more and learn about what there is to see and do. As you can see, we're located in the north of the USA with Montana, North Dakota and a little bit of Idaho bordering Canada. It's definitely a fly drive destination. Getting there is pretty straightforward. Denver is the official international gateway with a good number of direct flights going in there from here. Other international gateways include Salt Lake City, Minneapolis and Seattle, and there are also lots of small local airports dotted throughout the region that you can get connecting flights to. So today I want to give you a flavour of what Great America West is about, what you will experience when travelling around the region, and I'll cover the national parks, scenery, Wild West heritage, Native American culture and much more. Yellowstone National Park. Let's start with Yellowstone, as that's what's going to be your first draw to the area. It's the world's first national park and the mostly located in Wyoming, but it also falls into a little part of Idaho and Montana. This is a huge supervolcano. It has the largest display of geothermal activity anywhere in the world. Grand Prismatic, the main picture there, is the largest hot spring in the USA and the 3rd largest in the world. And those colours really are that vibrant. And if you look closely, you can see the people on the boardwalk, which shows you just how big it is. Old Faithful, top right, named for being the most reliable geyser in the park, erupts every 90 minutes approximately. The estimated times are always posted in the visitor centre, but there are lots of other geothermal features around the south of the park too. It's not all about hot springs and geysers though. The Yellowstone River has carved a deep canyon with two magnificent waterfalls known as the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. And Yellowstone has loads of wildlife that I'll touch on later. If you want to stay in Yellowstone, there are 7 different hotels in the park, but they book up really quickly. And Platinum Travel can help you with securing rooms either in the park or in one of the gateway towns. So Yellowstone has brought you to the Great American West, but there is so much more to do and see. This is Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming, one of my favorites. It's just south of Yellowstone in Wyoming, and there are it's the most mesmerizing 40-mile range of the US Rocky Mountains. There are 13 peaks above 12,000 feet. It's very dramatic scenery and incredible lakes, and they've got lots of walking routes and photography stops along the way. And again, lots of wildlife. Often paired with Yellowstone is Glacier National Park in Montana. You probably need a good couple of days on your road trip to cruise between the two, but it can be driven in one day because it takes about 5.5 hours between the two, door to door. Where Yellowstone is all about the heat of the geysers and the hot springs, Glacier is about the ice that the glaciers created. Picture towering mountains and reflective lakes. This park has all the twinkles. The scenery is epic and you won't be able to put your phone or camera down. It's right on the border of Canada and twins with Waterton National Park in Alberta, so it's very easy to combine as a 2-nation vacation. The Badlands National Park in South Dakota. So heading east and going to the South Dakota, this is Badlands. And again, it's a couple of days drive from Yellowstone. It's a huge fossil bed, and that's what gives it the eerie lunar-like landscapes. And being right in the heart of the USA is a great example of just how diverse the region is. My top tip, try and visit for sunrise or sunset. You won't be disappointed. And just to the north in North Dakota is Theodore Roosevelt National Park. This is where President Roosevelt claims he found himself after the death of his mother and his wife on the same day. And we've got a lot to thank him for because he was very influential in creating the National Park Service, which looks after all of the national parks across the USA today. So Theodore Roosevelt National Park has 3 units, North Unit, South Unit, and Roosevelt's actual cabin. And it's right next door to the cutest authentic cowboy town, Medora, complete with authentic saloons and with horses tied up outside. It's also a great place to see bison, elk, deer, wild horses, prairie dogs, coyotes, and birds of prey. That's just a taste of the national parks, but there is so much more. I want to share with you some other reasons people want to visit. Firstly, Mount Rushmore National Memorial in South Dakota. People often say they want to visit those faces carved in the hill, but they don't really know where it is. Well, it's in South Dakota, and it's really close to the Badlands National Park. So it's very easy to combine with Yellowstone when you fly into Denver. It's also known as the nation's shrine to democracy. So I give you the presidents, Jefferson, Washington, Roosevelt, and Lincoln. Just 20 minutes from Mount Rushmore is Crazy Horse Memorial. This is a memorial to the Lakota leader Crazy Horse. And because this is funded by donations and admissions fees, it's still being carved, so it's a work in progress. But when it's finished, all 4 of Mount Rushmore's faces will fit inside his head. It's that big. Also close to Mount Rushmore is Devil's Tower, which is just over the border in Wyoming. Made famous by the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it's an igneous rock formation and looms 867 feet above the prairie landscape. To walk around it is about a mile, but when you're there, you get quite a spiritual feeling, and it's well worth the drive of about 45 minutes off the highway to get there. It's a very special place to visit. Heading further west into Idaho, we've got Craters of the Moon National Monument. This gives you an idea of what may happen if Yellowstone's supervolcano erupted. It's a huge lava field where you can see what happened when the last big volcano volcano eruption and what it did to the area. There's loads of fascinating geology to explore and the craters and caves to look in. It truly is a natural phenomenon. But I think it's the Western culture that really brings a region alive. It feels so real and authentic. So first up are the Western towns, and they're all across the region. And this is where you're likely to stay when you're touring around. You really are likely to see a cowboy walking down the street. You can even buy your own cowboy hat or your boots. You can meet the locals in the saloons. They love a British accent. So I've picked a few of my favourites here for you. In the top left, we've got Whitefish, Montana. This is a perfect place to stay when exploring Glacier National Park. You can see the mountains from around you, and it's got a really cute mountain town vibe. Bottom left, we've got Deadwood. Probably heard of Deadwood. It's an old mining town known for mining and gambling and all sorts of nonsense, and notorious for Wild West characters like Calamity Jane and Wild Bill Hickok. In the middle, we've got Medora. I mentioned that earlier. It's the authentic little town that's the gateway for the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And top right, we've got Cheyenne in Wyoming. This is often one of the first stops you make when you leave Denver and you head up into the region. And it hosts the annual Frontier Days, which runs for about 10 days towards the end of July. Bottom right, Jackson, Wyoming, one of my favourite mountain towns. It's quite a sophisticated Western town because it's also a really well-known winter ski resort, and it's great for overnight stays when staying in Grand Teton National Park. It's very close. But if you want a true Western experience, then you have to stay on a ranch. There are 3 different types of ranches depending on what the kind of experience that you want. We've got the working ranches. This is where you get down and dirty with the owners. You help them with whatever they're doing on the day. You quite often camp outside and you end up sitting around at their dining table, chewing the fat and talking about the day. You have the luxury ranches as well. You can ride if you want to. You can take part in other activities. You can lounge around the pool, enjoy the spa, and it tends to be fine dining in the evening. Or the most popular are the guest and dude ranches, which are somewhere in between, still rustic and authentic, with lots of riding opportunities, other activities including fishing and shooting. Of course, the other Western experience is going to be the rodeo. Now, this is true Americana, and it's really lively and exciting. I've already mentioned that Cheyenne Frontier Days are where the rodeos play a part in the event. But in Cody, which is just east of Yellowstone, they hold a nightly rodeo between June and August. But as you travel throughout the region, there's lots of small competitions dotted around in the many small towns that you'll pass through or stay in. It's well worth doing. Native American culture is also huge in the region. There are lots of Indian reservations and villages across the 5 states. It's like visiting a different country depending on the tribe. So we definitely recommend visiting more than one, as they have different dances and languages and different crafts that they do for you to enjoy. If you can, one of the things to experience in the region is the local powwow, which take place throughout the year. And it's a local cultural gathering that includes dancing and singing competitions. In North Dakota, at the end of September, is one of the largest powwows in the region. It's called the United Tribes International Powwow and brings together the winners of the powwows in the USA for one big finale competition. It's very, very exciting. Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument in Montana commemorates the struggle of the Native Americans have been through. This is where General Custer fought the Lakota and Cheyenne tribes who were trying to preserve their way of life. We've always been led to believe that Custer was a bit of a hero, but in fact he was quite the unsavoury fella. And on this occasion, the tribe succeeded and Custer famously met his last stand or lost his life. It's a great tale and well worth taking a guided tour with one of the local tribes to learn more. Wildlife. Got there in the end. Wildlife in the region is outstanding. If you don't see a bison somewhere, you'll be really unlucky. Even luckier, you'll get caught up in a bison jam where they just literally block the road and cause a traffic jam. And they're quite wily. They know they're doing it. But there's also black bears, grizzly bears, wolves, moose, elk, coyote, wild horses, tiny cute prairie dogs, and loads of birds of prey. You'll definitely need to keep your eyes peeled, as you never know what's around the corner. And finally, I said the Great America West was the Great Fly Drive region. There are loads of scenic byways to explore. So sometimes that is going to be your attraction of the day when you travel between places. Some head through the mountains, and like the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park. It is literally on the side of the mountain. You can either drive the 50-mile road yourself, join a hop-on or hop-off bus, or I would recommend taking one of the famous red bus tours. It's really cool and they're really good fun. Other scenic byways loop through the prairies and ranch lands, and in the top right you can see a picture of the Enchanted Highway in North Dakota. This is really unusual. It's a trail of stunning repurposed scrap metal sculptures along the road. They're huge and they're really impressive and well worth a visit. So that's the Great America West. Lots to see and do. The perfect road trip destination to enjoy wide open spaces and get a really authentic taste of the real America. And Platinum Travel are perfectly equipped to help you design your holiday. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm going to be here later.
Brilliant, Lisa. Absolutely brilliant. This, in fairness, it was a huge ask to ask you to do 5 states in that short amount of time. So it really is just an overview that you could do, but you did brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. And I know we could plague you with questions forever. So I'm going to ask you if you have a favorite of the 5, or if you, I know I shouldn't ask you that. Okay, so I'm going to divide it. If people, we have a drive coming up after this, which shows a 21-night drive that we organized with you a while ago, which covers all 5 states, and you can do all 5. But would I be right in thinking that it's usually, like, I mean, a lot of the time it's the entry into Denver and up to Wyoming and going across up to Montana that way is one trip, and then going up the other way is another trip. So people do tend to break it down. What would you say the 3 main ones are that people do if they could do it 3 times?
Okay, I can't believe you asked me to pick a child there.
I know I did. I know I did. I shouldn't do, because you love them all the same. It's like Jim knows all his hotels the same. I put him on the spot too.
The couple. I mean, a lot of people do the Denver Loop, which is going to Denver, then they go up to Wyoming. They'll hit South Dakota and do Mount Rushmore, and then go across. And then go to Cody, into Yellowstone, and loop back down and come out of Denver that way. That's quite popular, and you can probably do that, realistically, quite quickly in about 2 weeks.
Comfortably, yeah.
The trips, I mean, like I said earlier on, you get connecting flights. Don't be frightened of the connecting flights, because once you've gone through the big city and you're just transferring through the bigger airport, coming out into one of these tiny little airports is lovely, because you literally just turn a corner and you're there by the car hire center and you pick it up, and it's very, very easy to manage. So places like Missoula, and which is up by Glacier National Park, you can do that drive from Glacier, then come down into Yellowstone, and then you can either choose, you can go into Utah, or you can go over deeper into Wyoming, or come out of Denver. That's quite a popular route as well. The Dakotas, I've got to say, I love the Dakotas. People always forget the Dakotas, and and again, they're just really, really quiet and authentic, and they've got so much Irish history as well. The heritage there is huge. So you can guarantee that if you're going to turn up in either the Dakotas, you're just going to be wrapped in bear hugs. But again, it's whether it's chasing the wildlife predominantly. It's what you're looking for your holiday. I mean, the wildlife out there is incredible, and there is no better feeling than being stuck in a bison jam. And because they are crafty, and they kind of give you the side eye as they're walking really slowly past your car. But that's all the joy of it. And I was really lucky as well to see about 11 wolves in Yellowstone. That was another amazing experience.
Really,
you get up dead early. It's very, very chilly. Layers, and then you go out with the telescopes, and you can see the wolves there. But we were really lucky. We saw them, a couple of them with the naked eye. They came quite close. but because there's the history of the walls in Yellowstone where they were reintroduced into the park, and how them being reintroduced has changed the shape of the park and the flora and the fauna. It's fascinating. But yeah, I mean,
That's an amazing story. Yeah, that they actually had an article on that the other day, and they commented on the wolves being reintroduced to Yellowstone and how what a significant difference it made. So yes, that's an interesting one, absolutely. So I'm sorry I put you on the spot there.
That's right.
I think it's really. I was lucky enough to go to South Dakota myself a couple of years ago and loved it. Absolutely loved it. And and the pictures that you showed us, obviously the pictures of the towns and Deadwood and all that. I mean, that's really what it's like. It really is what it's like. You really immerse yourself in the experience of it, and you feel you can kind of just become one of them when you're there, because they're so far away from, you know, the big city lights, and you're in these small towns. And also a Crazy Horse in Mount Rushmore. Crazy Horse is so much bigger than Mount Rushmore, so much bigger. And the history there is just, oh, you could spend hours in the museum. Really, really you could. So there's a bit for everybody, isn't there? Literally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, Paul, let you get on to questions.
Yeah, I have some questions here. Sarah's just asked, the stays at the ranches, what would you recommend the duration to be? You know, is a minimum duration to be?
Like what Jim was saying earlier on, Colorado's probably got more ability that you can go and kind of have a little taster for 2 days. I mean, generally in the Great American West, they like you to stay 3 or 4 nights, but there's a reason behind that. What they do is they get you to bond with your horse. So whichever level you are of rider, they will then match the horse to your ability. But the idea is that you go and you brush it down and you get to know the horse and they get to feel you, rather than having a trail that just you plod along. I mean, if you're a learner, then that's exactly what you do, but they'll take you on some spectacular scenery, and that's the purpose. But and again, you kind of supplement it with either a bit of shooting or fishing or this, that, and the other, and you have a really good outdoor experience. And it's really great for like older children. Really nice. I always call it the last chance teenage holiday, because it's the holiday where mum wants to take the kids away for one more time. The kids kind of want to go on holiday, but it's really uncool to go away with your folks. And so you have this kind of match where they go out and they do something spectacular that they'll never forget. And for a last family holiday, it's really special.
I think it's amazing how children suddenly don't want to go on holidays, and then there's a holiday to the States on the cards, and they suddenly change their mind. And that pocket, exactly. Yeah, I think it's also important to note for flying that you can fly into one airport and out of the other. Because we take that for granted because we're in the travel industry, but you can fly into, say, the likes of Denver and fly out to Rapid City, or fly into Jackson and out to Rapid City, or and you can mix and match with your car and your motorhome, and
absolutely,
the world is your oyster. Absolutely. Any more questions there, Paula? Before we
yeah, Marion has asked, are there costs involved? I know you touched on this already when talking about Utah and the one-way rentals, but are there costs involved in picking up a vehicle in one state and dropping off in another? I suppose maybe she means in Great America West, where you're marketing the states together.
Unfortunately, it's all down to state taxes and state rules. So yes, I think anywhere that you go in the USA, unless you're going back to the same state, there is a drop-off charge. It is what it is, unfortunately, but it's worth it.
Yeah, the only exception you'll ever really get is maybe Nevada and California. The odd time have a bit of an agreement, but you're right, Lisa, no matter what you do, if you cross the states, it is worth it. And if you're to try and double back, sometimes you end up doing the same thing. So you may as well pay the couple of $100 and get to where you want, rather than trying to make it back to save those $200 and seeing the same place twice. So
yeah, totally.
It's part of the cost. You just budget it in, and we'd always let you know about it. It's never going to be a hidden surprise. It's the only usual extra that you have to pay locally. Everything else is prepaid. So it's too bad.
And the last question I have here at the moment, it's for both of you. It's from Neil. Are there visitor Native American locations in Utah and Colorado as well?
The Navajo tribe are in Utah. They are south. Yeah, Monument Valley. That's all their land, and they're dotted around all over the place. It's quite and there's Native American history and culture in Moab as well. So it's predominantly in Utah. It's the Navajo tribe.
And definitely in Colorado, there are various visitor centers, archaeological sites as well. But by far the most important and famous is the Mesa Verde National Park, which is, again, down in the southwest, not far from the Utah border. And there are 600 cliff dwellings in this national park, all clustered together. And it's, thousands of years old. The Pueblans were down there. So it's definitely worth visiting if that's something you're interested in.
So this part of America, you're not too far from any of them, really. They really are. And they're all different. So, they're all different tribes, different histories, and a huge part of American history that we tend to forget about as well over here.
Well, I think we're kind of not been educated on it, and and there's a big sort of push to sort of like remind people about the Native American history. I mean, North Dakota's got 13 tribes alone, different tribes. Please don't ask me to name them. But then when you dot around all over that area, I mean, it is the heart of America. It's their homeland, and it's fascinating because it is all quirky little differences. The different songs that they sing and the dances that they do, and they all make similar foods, but it's different. It's very interesting
and very respectful. You have to be very respectful, don't you? And they're very serious about their traditions and how they work. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I can't believe the time has flown by. I'm just going to share my screen one more time. We can keep our cameras and videos on, and I just share very briefly. There's Lisa again. You keep popping up, Lisa. We get there.
No, like a bad penny.
Not at all, definitely not. Now, what I have here is just, if I get rid of that there, these are just a couple of ideas for everybody just to have a look at. Now, just to remind you all again, everything is tailor-made. Everything is tailor-made from start to finish. So these are just ideas of trips that you can do and what's included. For example, the Mighty Side 5 and Night Skies that Lisa talked about up here, 10 nights, 10 days from 1795. All of these include flights, accommodation, and car hire. Neil, you asked earlier on about motorhomes. And what I would normally tend to say to clients is, if you were to compare a motorhome for 10 days versus a hotel, a car and 3-star accommodation for hotels for 10 days, it's much of a muchness. You could kind of weigh it up. So you won't be choosing the RV on price versus accommodation. You'll be choosing it on experience. So I would always say to clients, what way do you want to travel? Because really there's not much in it. By the time you add in all the extras that you would pay for the RV in regards to linen and generation kits and all that sort of thing, versus what you'd pay for, say, 10 days in a hotel, 3-star with car hire, there's not a huge amount in it from experience. So it's how do you want to travel? And that'll give you a guideline. But of course, anybody that wants prices in RVs, we can give you detailed prices. Utah, Red Rocks and Canyons, another one there, 14 days from 2195. We put these for May 2022. And there's one there now for the national parks of Colorado and beyond. This takes in a little bit of Nebraska, would you believe? Wyoming, Colorado, and South Dakota. So we have 4 states there. This one over here is a really lovely one, Colorful Colorado. 9 days, $13.99. That's a lovely one to add on maybe with your Rocky Mountaineer. After or before, if you wanted to stay in Colorado and just stay in state. Or Jim mentioned the hot springs earlier. There's a gorgeous drive you can do just doing a tour of the hot springs because there's so many of them. So it's another nice idea for Colorado. And then 2 more here. The one the top right hand corner, this one is the 21 days. And this is just under €2,000 per person based on 4 sharing. So as Lisa said, if you're taking those couple of kids and the 4 of you go, and we cover all 5 states, and that starts in Rapid City and finishes in Jackson Hole. So it's a full loop, and that includes your accommodation and car hire and flights. And then the last one there, Rockies in Montana and Wyoming. So again, it was hard to pick a couple because there are hundreds and hundreds of combinations, but this will just give you an idea of what you can get. And again, the value for next year is quite good at the moment. Jim mentioned the Rocky Mountaineer, as did Lisa as well. We talked about it earlier on. Here's 2 ideas. I'll have to excuse the picture is actually a picture of the Rocky Mountaineer train in Canada, because they haven't actually done the train in Utah to Colorado yet, or vice versa. So I had to pick a picture of the train. But there's one there that we had 4 nights, 5 days, with 2 days on the Rocky Mountaineer, including flights and an extra night in Denver, 2559 in April next year. And it is scheduled to go the end of this year, but like Jim said, that could change. We don't know. And here's one that is a more leisurely pace, where you get 2 days on the Rocky Mountaineer, plus you get 5 nights with hotels and that should be 6 nights, I think, hotels and motor coach. So you get a tour all the way from Las Vegas across, and there's a lot included in that, which we can run through with you, including flights, and that's based on 2 sharing. So don't be turned off by the prices. There are meals and bits and pieces included in these tours and these trains that we can run through. And this is just 2 more I decided to put in for escorted journeys. I don't know if you can see the maps here, but this is the American Parks Trail, which goes from Jackson to Rapid City with Inside Vacations. And this is their accommodation is brilliant. And anybody who was on last week with Brian Hines, we had a very good introduction to Inside Vacations. And this is one of their trips. So you can see it covers a huge amount, and they've meals included, authentic dining, hand-picked hotels, top-rated highlights. And there's a huge amount in this. So if you want more information on how to do it by escorted tour and you want to do it well, these are the guys we can look at. Or their sister company, which is Trafalgar. They have gorgeous trips all over the US as well. And this is one of their ones on the right here that does Colorado. This is for longer. It's for 10 days. And again, cherry-picked hotels. Their words, not mine. 15 meals. So they have a number of dinners, lunches, etc. included, and other highlights. And this one starts at $3,699 per person. That's May next year. So again, if you want more information on these, we'll go into them in finer detail, but you can see that you can pretty much do any of these trips across the USA by any way you want, which is how we opened this presentation. Just if you are joining us for the rest of the week, we have East Coast tomorrow night, which is New England Capital Region, which is Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., New York State and Philadelphia joining us. Thursday, then we're going to have Visit California, Oregon, and Seattle. And then Thursday, we have the USA. So we've a lot covering in the USA. So there's a lot coming up for the rest of the week. I'd encourage you to pop along, even if you can't stay for all of it. If you want to stay for a little while and pick out the bits, it's well worth it. And then all it just leaves me to say thank you very much. And a huge thank you to Lisa Cooper and to Jim O'Dare for coming and joining us and giving up their time this evening, because we certainly couldn't do this night without them, and all their colleagues and the rest of the colleagues this week and last week. It's been lovely to inspire you all, and thanks to Paula as well. She's working goodo in the background there. And I don't know if there's any, I can't see the chat box from here, Paula. So is there any last questions or any messages that we need to before we sign off?
No other questions. Just thank yous and some lovely comments and all bucket list itineraries and bucket lists getting longer and longer, I think, as these 2 weeks go on.
Definitely. And Jim and Lisa, cannot thank you both enough. I hope we didn't keep you too long this evening.
No, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So we stay on for a minute and we'll let everybody pop off there, and we'll just finish up ourselves then, the 4 of us.